Oh, see, I paid for his protein, and he became your breakfast in bed.
The divorce papers were supposed to arrive next Tuesday. Instead, I found my wife's sister Karen living in our guest room with her 3 kids and a boyfriend I'd never met, eating cereal from my grandmother's china bowls like she owned the entire place. "Morning, Eugene," Karen said without looking up from her phone. "Hope you don't mind we used the good dishes. The kids were being picky about breakfast again." I stood there in my work clothes, greasy HVAC uniform that smelled like refrigerant and disappointment, watching this woman who'd never worked a day in her life treat my home like her personal hotel. The boyfriend, some tattooed guy in his 30s wearing a tank top that showed off prison tattoos, nodded at me like we were old friends. "Who the heck are you?" I asked him directly. "This is Derek," Karen answered for him. "He's staying with us for a while. Bernice said it was fine." Of course she did. My wife Bernice had been making decisions without me for months now. Ever since she started her CrossFit obsession and began hanging around with her new gym friends, I'd become background noise in my own house. "Where is Bernice?" I asked, checking my watch. 7:30 in the morning, and my wife was nowhere to be seen. "Early workout session with Troy," Karen said, still not looking up. "She'll be back around 9. Troy, the name that had been popping up in conversations for weeks now. Troy the trainer, Troy the motivator, Troy the reason my wife suddenly needed to shower immediately after coming home from the gym. I grabbed my coffee mug, the one that said "World's Okayest Dad" that my sons had given me as a joke, and headed for the door. Another day fixing other people's broken air conditioners while my own life fell apart. At the shop, my friend Harold looked up from the engine he was rebuilding. "You look like heck, Eugene. What's eating you now?" Karen moved in, with her boyfriend and kids. Bernice didn't even ask me. Harold whistled low. "That's the sister who borrowed $5,000 from you last year and never paid it back?" "The same one." I sat down heavily on a milk crate we used as a chair. "She's treating my house like a free boarding house, and Bernice acts like I'm the problem for not being thrilled about it. When's the last time you and Bernice actually talked? Like, really talked?" I thought about it. Honestly, I can't remember. She's always at the gym or with her gym friends or talking about the gym. Everything's about her new lifestyle and how much better she feels now that she's taking care of herself. I made air quotes with my fingers. What's that supposed to mean? It means I'm apparently part of the old life she's trying to leave behind. My phone buzzed with a text from Bernice. "Don't forget dinner with Salvador and Franklin tonight, 7 p.m. Try not to embarrass us." My 2 older sons, Salvador, 29, worked as a realtor and never missed a chance to remind everyone how much money he made. Franklin, 26, had a gambling problem I'd bailed him out of 3 times in the past year. Both of them had inherited their mother's talent for making me feel like a disappointment. "Family dinner tonight," I told Harold. "Can't wait to hear what I'm doing wrong this week. Maybe it won't be that bad." I laughed, but there was no humor in it. Harold, my wife's sister, is living in my guest room with her felon boyfriend. My wife spends more time with her trainer than with me, and my sons only call when they need money. How exactly is it going to get better? That evening, I came home to find the house full of people I barely recognized. Bernice's gym friends were there. Shay and Mindy, 2 women who looked like they lived on protein powder and gossip. Karen's boyfriend, Derek, was holding court in my living room, telling stories about his time in county lockup to my youngest son, Damien, like they were war stories. "Eugene?" Bernice called out when she saw me. "There you are. Come meet everyone properly." She looked different, tighter, more muscular, but also harder somehow. The woman I'd married 25 years ago had been soft around the edges, quick to laugh. This version of Bernice looked like she was always ready for a fight. "I know everyone," I said. "This is my house." "Don't be antisocial," she said, grabbing my arm and pulling me toward the kitchen. "Shay and Mindy were just telling me about this amazing couples retreat they went on. Maybe we should consider something like that." In the kitchen, I could hear the women talking. "I'm just saying," Shay was saying, "a man who doesn't take care of himself is basically giving up on his marriage." "Exactly," Mindy agreed. "Like, when was the last time Eugene even tried to work out or dress nicely or, She lowered her voice, but not enough. "Make an effort in the bedroom?" I froze. They were talking about my love life, in my kitchen, at what was supposed to be a family dinner. "Oh, God," Bernice laughed. "Don't get me started. I keep telling him that just because he can fix an air conditioner doesn't mean he knows how to handle anything else that needs attention." The women erupted in laughter. I stood there, holding a beer I no longer wanted, listening to my wife mock our intimate life to her friends. Salvador appeared beside me. Dad, we need to talk. About what? About this whole situation. Mom told us about the problems you two have been having. What problems? Franklin joined us, looking uncomfortable. Look, Dad, we're not taking sides, but maybe you should consider that Mom has a point about some things. What point? About you not growing with her, Salvador said carefully. She's been working on herself, getting healthier, expanding her social circle. Maybe you should try to keep up. I looked at my sons, two grown men who still came to me when they needed money, giving me relationship advice. Keep up how? I don't know. Join a gym, buy some new clothes, stop acting like you're already retired. From the living room, I heard Derek's voice getting louder. So I told the guard, you can search me all you want, but you ain't gonna find nothing because I'm smarter than you think. That's fascinating, I said to my sons. Your mother's sister's boyfriend is regaling our guests with prison stories. Your mother's in the kitchen telling her friends that I'm lousy in bed, and you two think I'm the one who needs to change. Dad, Damien approached us, looking younger than his 23 years. Maybe we could all just try to get along. For Mom's sake. For Mom's sake? I nodded slowly. Right, because God forbid anyone consider what might be good for Dad's sake. Bernice appeared with her friends in tow. Eugene, Shay was just asking about your work. Tell her about that big commercial job you did last month. I fix air conditioners, I said flatly. They break. I fix them. It's not very exciting. He's being modest, Bernice said, but her voice had an edge. Eugene's very good at fixing things. It's just too bad he's not as good at maintaining them. More laughter from her friends. My sons looked embarrassed, but not for me. They were embarrassed of me. You know what? I set down my beer. I think I'll skip dinner. You all seem to be having a great time without me anyway. Eugene, don't be dramatic, Bernice said. Dramatic? Your sister's boyfriend is telling prison stories in our living room. Your friends are discussing our love life in our kitchen, and our sons are giving me self-improvement advice. But I'm being dramatic. I headed toward the stairs, but Salvador caught my arm. Dad, come on. We're family. Are we? I looked around the room. Because from where I'm standing, it looks like I'm just the guy who pays for everything while everyone else lives their best life. That night, lying in bed next to Bernice, who was texting someone at 11:30 at night, I made a decision. If my family wanted to treat me like I was invisible, maybe it was time to show them what invisible really looked like. The next morning, I called my lawyer. Eugene, Tom Patterson had been handling my legal affairs for 10 years. What can I do for you? I want to know about separating my finances from my wife's, and I want to know about removing people from my property. Are we talking about divorce? We're talking about me taking control of my own life. 3 weeks later, the plan was in motion. I'd quietly moved my inheritance money, the money from my father's estate that had been sitting in our joint account, into a separate account in my name only. I consulted with Tom about my rights regarding house guests, and I'd started documenting everything. The documentation part was easier than I'd expected. Karen's boyfriend Derek had warrants out for unpaid child support. Karen herself owed back taxes in 2 states. My wife's gym friends had been posting photos of their girls' nights out that showed them drinking and driving. And Bernice? Well, Bernice had been sloppy about covering her tracks with Troy. I found the text messages on our shared iPad. Months of them, not just about workouts. Can't wait to see you tomorrow. Eugene's working late again. That thing you did with your tongue. I've been thinking about it all day. He doesn't even notice when I come home late anymore. It's like I'm married to a ghost. A ghost? That's what I was to my own wife, my own. A ghost who paid the mortgage and fixed the appliances and provided the money for her gym membership so she could meet men who weren't ghosts. I screenshot everything and sent it to myself. Then I started planning. The opportunity came sooner than I'd expected. Bernice announced that she wanted to throw me a surprise birthday party for my 50th. It'll be fun, she said. Just family and a few friends. Nothing too crazy. I don't really want a party. Come on, Eugene. When's the last time we celebrated anything? It'll be good for us. She seemed almost eager about it, which should have been my first warning sign. Bernice hadn't been eager about anything involving me in months. The party was scheduled for Saturday night at Murphy's Brewery, a local place with a private room in the back. When I arrived, the room was packed with people I barely knew. Bernice's gym crowd was there in force, along with Karen and Derek, my 3 sons, and a few neighbors. Surprise! Everyone yelled, but the enthusiasm felt forced. Troy was there. I recognized him from the photos Bernice had on her phone. Tall, heavily tattooed, wearing a tight shirt that showed off his CrossFit physique. He shook my hand like we were old friends. "Eugene, happy birthday, man. Bernice talks about you all the time." I bet she does, I thought. The evening started normally enough. People mingled, drank beer, made small talk. But as the alcohol flowed, the conversation got looser and meaner. "Speech! Speech!" someone called out. Salvador stood up, holding a beer. "I'd like to say a few words about my father." Here we go, I thought. "Dad, you've always been reliable," Salvador began. "You show up, you do your job, you pay your bills. You're like a really dependable appliance." Laughter from the crowd. Not warm laughter. "And like most appliances," Franklin chimed in, "you're not very exciting, but we'd probably miss you if you broke down completely." More laughter. I looked at Bernice, expecting her to shut this down, but she was smiling. "Speaking of breaking down," Shay called out, "Bernice was telling us about your attempt at romance last month. The dinner you made?" "Oh, God," Bernice laughed. "He tried to cook this elaborate meal, but he burned everything. The smoke alarm went off 3 times. The neighbors called to make sure the house wasn't on fire. And then," Mindy added, "he tried to be all romantic afterward, but what?" I asked, my voice cutting through the laughter. The room got quiet. Mindy looked at Bernice, who waved her hand dismissively. "It's fine. He knows he's not exactly Casanova," Bernice said. "I mean, after 25 years, we're basically roommates anyway." "Roommates," I repeated. "You know what I mean," she said quickly. "We're comfortable with each other." Comfortable? I stood up slowly. Is that what we're calling it? The room was dead silent now. Everyone was looking at me, waiting to see what the reliable appliance would do. "You know what's funny?" I said, looking around the room. "I came here thinking this was a birthday party, but it's actually a roast. A roast where my wife tells strangers that I'm boring in bed, my sons compare me to a broken appliance, and everyone laughs about what a disappointment I am." "Eugene," Bernice said, "you're being too sensitive." Am I? I pulled out my phone and opened the screenshots I'd saved. Because I've been thinking maybe I should be more sensitive, more attentive to what's really going on around me. I held up the phone so she could see her own text messages on the screen. The color drained from her face. "What is that?" she asked quietly. "These are your text messages with Troy here?" I said loudly enough for everyone to hear. "The ones where you talk about how much you enjoy his tongue, and how I'm like a ghost, and how easy it is to sneak around behind my back." The room erupted. People were gasping, talking over each other, pulling out their own phones to record what was happening. Troy stepped forward. "Hey, man, I think you're misunderstanding." "Am I misunderstanding this one?" I read from the phone. "Eugene's working late again. Come over around 8. We'll have at least 2 hours before I have to pretend to be tired." Bernice lunged for my phone, but I stepped back. "Or this one. I can't believe I wasted 25 years on someone who thinks foreplay is asking if I'm ready." "Stop it!" Bernice screamed. "Stop reading those!" "Why?" I asked. "You didn't seem to mind sharing details about our love life with your friends. I thought everyone was interested in my personal business." My sons were staring at their mother in shock. Salvador looked like he was going to be sick. Franklin was backing toward the door. Even Damien, who always tried to keep the peace, looked horrified. "Dad," Salvador said quietly, "maybe we should all just go home." "Home?" I laughed, and it was not a pleasant sound. "You mean the home where your aunt and her boyfriend are living rent-free? The home where your mother brings her lover when I'm at work? That home?" I looked around the room at all these people who had been laughing at me 5 minutes ago. You know what the best part is? You all think I'm pathetic. The boring husband, the disappointing father, the reliable appliance. But at least I'm not a cheating wife or a deadbeat boyfriend or grown men who still need daddy to pay their bills. I walked toward the door, then turned back. "By the way, Bernice, I moved my inheritance money into a separate account this morning. Karen and her boyfriend have until Sunday to find somewhere else to live. And Troy," I looked directly at him, "my wife's all yours. Just remember, if she'll cheat with you, she'll cheat on you." I left them all standing there in stunned silence. But that was just the beginning. The next morning, I woke up to 17 missed calls and 43 text messages. Bernice had apparently spent the night at Shay's house, and everyone wanted to talk. My sons wanted to know if I was serious about cutting off their money. Karen wanted to know if I was serious about evicting her. Bernice wanted to know if we could work things out. I ignored them all and went to work. Harold took one look at me and grinned. You look like a man who burned down his own house and enjoyed watching it burn. Something like that. Want to talk about it? I told him everything, the party, the text messages, the confrontation. When I finished, Harold was quiet for a long moment. So what's the plan? He asked. Plan? Eugene, you just declared war on your entire family. You better have a plan for what comes next. He was right. I'd acted on impulse at the party, but now I needed to think strategically. These people had been taking advantage of me for years, treating me like I was nothing. It was time to show them exactly how much nothing I really was. I started with Karen. On Sunday morning, I showed up at the house with an eviction notice and 2 police officers. You can't do this, Karen screamed from the front porch. Bernice said we could stay. Bernice doesn't own this house, I said calmly. I do. You have 2 hours to pack your things and leave. Derek came out shirtless, trying to look intimidating. This is BS, man. We got nowhere to go. That's not my problem, I said. You've got outstanding warrants, Derek. I'd suggest you focus on getting packed instead of arguing with me. One of the officers stepped forward. Sir, is that true about the warrants? Derek's tough guy act crumbled immediately. Within an hour, Karen's family was loading their stuff into a U-Haul while Derek tried to avoid making eye contact with the cops. You're heartless, Karen told me as she carried the last box to the truck. Family is supposed to help family. You're right, I said. Family is supposed to help family, not take advantage of family. Next, I dealt with my son's financial situation. I called Salvador first. Dad, thank God, he said when he answered. We need to talk about Mom. She's a mess. She's been crying all weekend. I'm not calling about your mother, I said. I'm calling to let you know that I'm closing the joint account that I've been using to help with your mortgage payments. Silence. What do you mean? I mean that starting next month, you'll need to make your full mortgage payment on your own. The same goes for Franklin's gambling debts and Damien's college tuition. You're all adults. It's time you started acting like it. Dad, you can't be serious. I can't afford my mortgage without your help. Then maybe you should have thought of that before you spent my birthday party comparing me to a broken appliance. That was just... We were joking around. You know we didn't mean it. The problem, Salvador, is that I think you did mean it. I think you all see me as nothing more than a source of money. Well, the bank is closed. I hung up and immediately called Franklin. Dad? He sounded panicked. Salvador just called me. Please tell me you're not really cutting us off. I'm really cutting you off. But I owe $12,000 to some very serious people. They're not going to accept my dad's mad at me as an excuse for not paying. Then you better figure out how to come up with $12,000. How am I supposed to do that? Get a job, Franklin. A real job, not poker. Dad, please. I know we screwed up at the party, but you didn't screw up at the party, Franklin. You showed me exactly who you really are. All of you did. The calls from Damien were harder. He was the youngest, and he'd always been the most decent of my 3 sons. But he'd also been the most dependent on my financial support. Dad, he said when I finally answered, I don't understand what's happening. Mom's staying with Aunt Shay. Salvador's talking about selling his house. Franklin's freaking out about some debt. What's going on? What's going on is that I'm tired of being taken for granted. But I never took you for granted. I've always appreciated everything you've done for me. Have you? Because at the party, you stood there and watched your brothers humiliate me. And you didn't say a word. I didn't know what to say. I was shocked by the whole thing. You were shocked that your mother was cheating on me? Or shocked that I finally stood up for myself? Long pause. Both, I guess. Well, here's something else that might shock you. I'm not paying for your college anymore. If you want to finish your degree, you'll need to figure out how to do it on your own. Dad, I only have 1 semester left. Then you better make it count. By Wednesday, the whole family was in crisis mode. Bernice had moved in with Shay temporarily, but that was clearly not a long-term solution. Salvador was frantically trying to refinance his mortgage. Franklin had taken a job at a call center, working 12-hour shifts to try to pay down his gambling debt. And Damien had withdrawn from college to get a full-time job. I felt a little guilty about Damien, but not enough to change my mind. Sometimes people need to learn that actions have consequences. The real satisfaction came from watching Bernice's social circle implode. Word had gotten around about the party confrontation, and apparently, Not everyone was as supportive of adultery as Bernice had expected. The gym, where she worked as an instructor, started getting complaints from members who didn't approve of her behavior. Troy, it turned out, had been sleeping with at least 2 other married women from the gym. And when that news came out, the whole place became a hotbed of drama and recrimination. Shay called me on Thursday. "Eugene, this has gone far enough," she said. "Bernice is destroyed. She's barely eating. She's not sleeping. You've made your point. Have I? What point is that? That you're angry about the affair. We get it. But this scorched earth approach isn't helping anyone. It's helping me. How is destroying your family helping you? Shay, let me ask you something. At the party, when you and Mindy were making jokes about my love life, did it occur to you that I might be able to hear you? We'd been drinking. And when my sons were calling me a broken appliance, did you think that was funny? It was just party talk, Eugene. People say things they don't mean when they're trying to be entertaining. But here's the thing. I think they did mean it. I think you all see me as this pathetic figure who exists to pay bills and fix things and take all the blame. Well, I'm done being that guy. So what do you want? You want Bernice to beg for forgiveness? I want Bernice to face the consequences of her choices, just like I'm facing the consequences of mine. Friday evening, I was at Harold's shop helping him rebuild a transmission when Bernice showed up. She looked terrible, red eyes, hollow cheeks, like she hadn't slept in days. "Eugene, we need to talk." Harold looked at me, and I nodded. He wiped his hands on a rag and headed for the door. "I'll be at Murphy's if you need me." When we were alone, Bernice sat down on the milk crate and started crying. "I'm sorry," she said. "I'm so sorry about everything. The affair, the party, all of it. I know I hurt you." "Yes, you did. Can we please try to work this out? I ended things with Troy. I quit the gym. I'm willing to do whatever it takes to fix this." I looked at my wife, this woman I'd loved for 25 years who had become a stranger. "Bernice, do you remember our wedding day?" "Of course." "Do you remember what you said in your vows about honoring and cherishing me?" She nodded, tears streaming down her face. "When did you stop? When did I become someone you could mock to your friends? When did I become so unimportant that you could cheat on me and think I wouldn't notice?" "I don't know," she whispered. "I don't know when it happened. I felt like we were strangers living in the same house, like we were just going through the motions. So instead of talking to me about it, you decided to talk to Troy about it, with your clothes off. It wasn't supposed to happen. It started as friendship, and then you decided that I was such a pathetic loser that I'd never find out, or that even if I did find out, I'd be too weak to do anything about it." She looked up at me with something like surprise. "You're different. I'm the same person I've always been. The difference is that I'm not pretending anymore." "Pretending what?" "Pretending that I'm okay with being treated like garbage by the people who are supposed to love me." We sat in silence for a few minutes. Finally, Bernice spoke again. "What do you want from me?" "I want you to understand that there are consequences for your actions. You humiliated me in front of our friends and family. You cheated on me for months. You made me feel like I was worthless. I know, and I'm sorry. Sorry doesn't fix it, Bernice. Sorry doesn't undo the damage. So what does? What can I do to make this right?" I looked at her for a long moment. "I don't think you can." The final confrontation came the following Saturday. I was at home, enjoying the peace and quiet of my empty house, when I heard cars pulling into the driveway. Through the window, I saw Bernice getting out of Shay's car, followed by Salvador, Franklin, and Damien. They were clearly coming for some kind of intervention. I opened the door before they could knock. "Family meeting?" I asked. Salvador stepped forward, trying to take charge. "Dad, we need to talk. This whole situation has gotten out of hand." "Has it?" "You're destroying everything," Franklin said. "Mom's a wreck. We're all struggling financially. The whole family is falling apart." "Interesting perspective," I said. "Come in." They filed into my living room and sat down like they were staging an intervention, which I realized they probably were. "Dad," Damien said, "we all know you have a right to be angry. What Mom did was wrong, and the way we acted at the party was wrong. But this punishment thing has gone too far." "Punishment?" "Cutting off our money, kicking out Aunt Karen, refusing to talk to Mom," Salvador listed. "You're trying to punish all of us." "No," I said. "I'm not trying to punish you. I'm trying to save myself." "Save yourself from what?" from being invisible in my own life. I looked around at their faces, my wife, my 3 sons, the people who were supposed to matter most to me in the world. Do you want to know what the worst part of that party was? I asked. It wasn't finding out about the affair. It wasn't even being humiliated in front of all those people. The worst part was realizing that none of you see me as a real person. That's not true, Bernice protested. Isn't it? Bernice, when's the last time you asked me about my day? Not whether I fixed something or whether I deposited my paycheck, but actually asked me how I was doing. She opened her mouth, then closed it. Salvador, when's the last time you called me just to talk? Not to ask for money, not to complain about something, just to see how your old man was doing? Salvador looked uncomfortable. Franklin, can you tell me one thing about my life that doesn't involve bailing you out of trouble? Franklin stared at the floor. Damien, you're the only one who's ever shown any interest in me as a person, but even you only call when you need something. Dad, Damien said quietly, that's not fair, isn't it? Think about it. Really think about it. When was the last time any of you treated me like I mattered for something other than what I could provide? The room was silent. You want to know why I cut off the money? Because that's all I was to you, a source of money. You want to know why I'm not trying to save my marriage? Because I wasn't a husband, I was a roommate who paid the bills while my wife found excitement somewhere else. I stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the street where I'd lived for 15 years. I spent 25 years trying to be a good husband and father. I worked overtime to pay for Salvador's real estate classes. I bailed Franklin out of debt over and over again. I paid for Damien's college. I fixed everything that broke. I paid every bill on time. I showed up for every birthday and holiday and school event. I turned back to face them. And what did I get for it? A wife who cheated on me because I was boring, and sons who thought it was funny to compare me to a broken appliance. You all took me for granted, and when I finally stood up for myself, you act like I'm the one who's out of line. We didn't mean to take you for granted, Salvador said, but you did, for years. And the only reason you're here now is because you want me to go back to being the guy who pays for everything and asks for nothing in return. That's not true, Bernice said. I'm here because I love you. Do you? Or do you love the security I provide? Because there's a difference. She didn't answer. Here's what's going to happen, I said. Bernice, I'm filing for divorce. You can have half of the marital assets as required by law, but the house is mine. It was my inheritance that paid for it. You'll need to find somewhere else to live. Eugene, I'm not finished. Salvador, Franklin, Damien, you're all adults. It's time you started acting like it. I'm not your personal bank anymore. If you want a relationship with me, it's going to be based on mutual respect, not financial dependence. Dad, please, Franklin said. I can't make it without your help. Then you better figure out how to make it. Because the alternative is learning to live without me entirely. I walked to the front door and opened it. I think this conversation is over. They filed out slowly, Bernice crying, my sons looking shell-shocked. As they reached their cars, Salvador turned back. Dad, what if we can't do it? What if we can't make it without your help? Then you'll fail, I said. And maybe failure will teach you something that success never did. I closed the door and locked it. 6 months later, I was a different man living a different life. The divorce was finalized, and Bernice had moved to another town to start over. Salvador had managed to keep his house by taking on a roommate and working nights at a second job. Franklin had gotten clean from gambling and was slowly paying down his debts. Damien had finished his last semester by taking out student loans and was now working as a teacher. None of them had spoken to me in 3 months. I was okay with that. I'd sold the house and bought a smaller place across town. I'd started dating a woman named Carol who worked at the library and thought I was interesting. I'd taken up woodworking and joined a hiking club. For the first time in years, I felt like I was living my own life instead of just funding everyone else's. Harold stopped by on a Saturday afternoon and found me building a bookshelf in my garage. You look good, he said. Happy? I am happy. Any regrets? I thought about it. I regret that it took me so long to realize what was happening. I regret that I let them treat me that way for so many years. What about losing your family? Harold, they weren't my family. They were people who happened to be related to me who saw me as a resource to be exploited. My real family, if I ever have one again, will be people who actually care about me as a person. Think any of them will come around? Maybe Damien. He's got the best heart of the bunch, but honestly, I'm not holding my breath. And if they don't, then I'll know I made the right choice. As Harold left, I went back to work on the bookshelf. It was a beautiful piece, solid oak, hand-fitted joints built to last. Like the life I was building for myself. Strong, carefully constructed, and designed to support the things that actually mattered. My phone rang. I glanced at it and saw Damien's name on the screen. I hesitated for a moment, then answered. Hi, Dad. Damien. I was wondering, would you like to have lunch sometime? Just to talk. Not about money or family drama, just to talk. I smiled. I'd like that. Good. How about next Saturday? Next Saturday sounds perfect. After I hung up, I went back to work on the bookshelf. Maybe I hadn't lost everything after all. Maybe I just finally learned the difference between being needed and being valued. And maybe, just maybe, that was worth everything it had cost me to learn.